It's not often that the DLC for a game has people talking more than the game itself, but that has definitely been a theme with Far Cry 5. It's not entirely surprising when you get the developers of Far Cry Blood Dragon working on spiders on Mars, hordes of zombies, and in the case of this review, a venture into Vietcong. But the question I suppose you're asking yourselves is it a tropic blunder? Well, the thing is, this isn't the start we were hoping for. It's not that Hours of Darkness is bad, it's just kind of boring. It's a piece of content that never really gets out of third gear. Some might even say it never really gets out of second gear. Most of the time, you feel like you're moving from point A to point B, as the DLC doesn't really do a good job of disguising it with effective narrative or diversifying massively from the 50 to 100 hours of Far Cry 5 that you've already played. It does start with a bang though, as you and your team crash land into Vietnam, as shown through a really cool hand-drawn animated cutscene, and soon find yourself imprisoned at a campsite, forced to watch a brutal execution of a friend. Desperate, you find yourself chatting to a fellow prisoner in the cage side by side, trying to figure out how to escape this predicament and certain death, but all hope seems lost. And then, before you know it, you're repeating the opening of Far Cry 5 as friendly fighters airstrike the area to open up a window of opportunity. Then you're on the run, you're defenseless and dodging bullets for the thickets of the jungle. It's all very dynamic and action-packed, and yet it feels very familiar. And this kind of sets the tone for the rest of the content. The aim is to try to make it back to a rendezvous extraction point on the other side of the jungle, collecting your three captured teammates while trudging through blades of grass, skimming over waterfalls and ducking under the shade of trees. Hours of Darkness has lots of side objectives for you to accomplish, like destroying propaganda gramophones, freeing prisoners of war, eliminating NVA commanders, collecting lighters, and destroying AA guns. In some cases, the side objectives do actually cross over into the main quest as well, but on the whole, your objective always remains clear. By doing some of the side quests, however, you can make your progress through the content a bit easier. For instance, if you wipe out AA guns in an area, you can call in an airstrike to take out a base from the distance and watch as it satisfyingly burns to the ground. But here's the thing, I finished Hours of Darkness in one sitting, and I don't feel at all inclined to go back and collect the things I missed. Sure, 70s Vietnam has been beautifully recreated, and there's some stunning vistas and set pieces to gawp at, but about halfway through, I was kind of already done. The environments are incredibly samey, and I don't think the lore or the narrative is captivating enough to make it memorable. There's a very brief mention of a jaguar prowling the forest at the beginning, but during the main quest, nothing else is made of that. You just kill people and blow stuff up, which admittedly is the plot for most 80s movies, but you also had cool lines, quirky characters, and unforgettable soundtracks. I can't say the same about anyone or anything in Hours of Darkness. So you're probably asking the question, is the season pass a bust? God no. Admittedly, I always felt like Hours of Darkness could be the weakest of the three pieces of content, so my expectations were kind of low anyway. And anyway, it's not a terrible piece of DLC, I just think release cycle wise, it might have been better placed coming either second or maybe even third. Because it's the first piece of DLC, it feels too close to the hours upon hours we've already invested in Far Cry 5 back in March, and it sort of falls a bit flat because of that. But all that said, Hours of Darkness also introduces several new features to Far Cry to freshen up the formula just a little bit. For one thing, those teammates you need to collect, they can actually die in the game, meaning you may not make it out of Vietnam with all three of your teammates. And that adds a certain level of drama when you're running around and shooting everything. You'll always need to keep one eye on your boys, because if they go down, they stay down. And the problem is they're not always the most responsive or reliable, occasionally going gung-ho when you'd rather they'd hang back and time your strikes with you. And for another, there's a real emphasis on stealth this time around, and in developing your own survival instinct. By taking down enemies quietly with melee weapons or silence weapons, you gain perks. If you remain undetected, you'll also get to keep those perks, like an adrenaline perk which lets you move faster while crouched and improve your tagging distance. There's also a ghost perk which reduces the noise that you make, a sixth sense that automatically tags enemies who have targeted you, and a predator perk allowing you to tag enemies through walls while using your binoculars. This is a neat way of keeping you ahead of your opponents and giving you the edge in battle, which you will need as there's one or two tough spots where you're overwhelmed by both ground and aerial forces. More often than not, you will get pulverized if you charge in head first, though you do get some decent firepower to play with, like bazookas and remote explosives. Some sequences in particular are made to be harder than they should be to really drive home the idea that you need to play this in stealth, and it's kind of almost as if the game is forcing you to play a certain way, which is a little bit disappointing and kind of goes against the grain of Far Cry anyway. Hours of Darkness has some highlights, especially the game's ending sequence, which allows you to let off a bit of steam, and the map is a pretty substantial size with lots to see and do, but honestly it all feels a little bit bland. Ubisoft Shanghai's efforts are enjoyable enough, but one just hopes that the bar of quality is raised even higher for Dead Living Zombies and Lost on Mars. For a season pass that looks set to break the mold of the series to try new and exciting things, Hours of Darkness mostly just plays it safe. So to summarise, on the pro side, there is a creative emphasis on stealth, some absolutely gorgeous environments, and it is packed with content. There's at least 4 to 5 hours worth here. On the cons, AI is always disobedient and disorganised, some sections are overly tough, kind of forcing you to play in a certain way, and it is all overly familiar and often a bit bland. But we've chosen to give Far Cry 5 Hours of Darkness a 6.5 out of 10. Thank you very much for tuning in. Don't forget to give us a like and a subscribe. If you've got any thoughts on Far Cry 5 Hours of Darkness, let us know down below. Or if you're interested in any of the content in the Season Pass, we'd love to hear from you, as we're going to be covering it all as it comes out. And we will see you next time.